Welcome to Resilience Unravelled, featuring scientists, practitioners, experts and everyday people with knowledge, tips, experience and great stories to share to help you get a grip of your life. We'll give you insights into a range of subjects, including reducing your stress, improving your emotional intelligence, health and well-being, and controlling your negative thoughts. By doing this, you'll be able to improve your resilience, confidence, control, and perform better every day to live a more productive and purposeful life. For a free resilience ebook, listen through to the end for details. Here's your host, Dr. Russell Thackeray.
So today I'm talking about confidence, and I'm talking to a woman called Jo Emerson. Good morning, Jo.
Good morning, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, and like many of our podcasts, I detect a British accent.
Yeah, very British, I think. Although I think there's probably a mixture of nationalities in my heritage. But yes, born and bred.
Ooh, tell me more. Are you one of those mongrel types?
Definitely. So my granny was Welsh. My grandfather was American. I don't know who my biological father was because I was donor conceived. So there's all sorts in here. Apparently I look quite Swedish, so maybe there's some Scandinavian in here as well. Who knows? But I was born and bred in the UK.
I'm having one of those living DNA tests done at the moment, so I've sent it away now. I'm from Newcastle originally, in the northeast, obviously. So I'm hoping I'm going to be of true Viking heritage.
Let me know.
So, Jo, sorry, I'm Mr. Unstructured here. If you were to meet anyone, how would you describe yourself? What do you say you do?
What do I say I do? Well, first and foremost, Russell, I'm a mother of 3 children, and they have to come first. But at work, I call myself a confidence coach because that's what I do. But what does that mean? I guess that means I help people to A, reach their potential, but B, do so in an authentic way. Most of my clients have got lost in the cultural soup of shoulds. You know, we should be doing this kind of job and we should look a certain way and our lives should look like the next door neighbours. And the problem with that is it makes people very, very unhappy because they're not doing what's really inside them. So it's my job to help people find that on a personal level. And then I do lots of leadership development and team development work, and that's more about people having the courage to have more honest conversations and again be kind of true to who they are and the role that they've been asked to play.
Fascinating. So you've already started to bandy about all the trendy words. So if you don't mind, should we start to unpick it a bit? Because people sort of chuck around this word, and I must admit I got really interested myself about this idea of authenticity.
Okay, that's the trendy word. Okay,
Come on, let's start with a bit of authenticity before we get into confidence.
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing. So, okay.
Okay, contentious, carry on.
Well, okay, so my view, and this is born from personal experience, is that the only way to be truly confident is to be who you actually are, which is authenticity. Most people... most people, I'm going to change that. I think our culture maybe teaches us that confidence is quite loud and quite brash and quite in your face. And often the people who are like that are wearing a mask and they're not being true to who they really are. And actually, for me, confidence is the ability to say, I'm struggling, or I don't know, or I'm not great in this area, and for that to be okay. And that's authentic. And when we break through that mask and start being who we really are, we start building lives that are based on something genuine rather than all these shoulds that we've been handed down from other people who didn't really know what was going on and how to have a life. And so that's why for me confidence and authenticity are in fact probably the same thing.
So I like that. It makes a lot of sense. I think people confuse confidence with showmanship, don't they? And this idea that you should be dancing around being a public speaker or going on X Factor, that's called confidence. But it isn't. It's that sort of quiet determination that you are your true self, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's self-belief. Yeah, self-belief. some people are naturally loud and confident. That's great. But some people are naturally quiet and confident, and that's also great. Some people bob in between the two. Most of us bob in between the two. But people I've worked with have got this idea that confidence is something it's not. And if you think you have to be a certain type of person in order to be confident, you're doing yourself a disservice, because confidence is in everyone, but it's unique to us all.
But I like the way that you're talking about this idea that people have this script about, and it's one of those classic thinking errors, isn't it? This sort of script of shoulds and oughts, should-haves and ought-tos. So I guess there's a lot of people out there sort of living fake lives in a way.
Yeah. Yes. A lot of people are living, fake lives. It's really interesting. I keep using this word culture and the cultural soup, and it's very it's very keen for me at the moment. I'm thinking about it a lot because my clients are bringing lots of stories about how when they are living fake lives or living in the shoulds and the oughts, they feel very disconnected from others. They feel very disconnected from themselves, and they're certainly not happy and thriving. And Tony Robbins, who's we were discussing, didn't we, before we started recording? He's I find him a very inspirational man, and he's an American coach. He's like Marmite. Some people hate him, some people love him. I happen to think he's great. He says to his clients, "Stop shoulding all over yourself," which I love, because shoulds come with a finger wagging, and they come with a sense of duty, and they're quite onerous, whereas coulds or wants or needs or what ifs, dreams, they come with a different energy. There's a different there's a different weight behind them. And I suppose my job really is to help people decipher between the shoulds and the coulds, because of course we all should feed our children, we all should pay the mortgage. There are shoulds that we sort of have to adhere to. But having said that, if someone's lifelong dream has been to travel and they have no dependents, then but they're not travelling because they think, I should save for my retirement, and I should have a pension, and I should have more and more. I'd be questioning that. I would be questioning that with my clients. So my father, who I adored. He wasn't my biological father because, like I said, I was donor conceived. But the man who brought me up and who loved me into this world, he spent 30 years in a job he hated in order to retire. But he died at 55 unexpectedly and never got to retire. Yeah. And that was a great lesson for me. A great lesson.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And you see, I actually probably take a more extreme view than you, that I don't think we should use the should word ever. I don't think you should feed your children. I think you must feed your children. And it's like this idea of these sort of little words that really mean the application of effort and not outcomes. And actually they're the things you use to beat yourselves up. And I've worked with lots of people where you just say, look, let's get rid of that word. Let's just remove it from the language. Yeah. And it's quite enabling, I find, like try and such like. It's interesting how we have these little code words that mean I'm not going to do it. And shoulds just mean I'm not going to do it. Instead of being honest with myself, we end up with this idea of sort of punishing ourselves instead of saying... So we punish ourselves for not achieving it, but working really hard, instead of rewarding ourselves for just achieving it. It's a lack of honesty, isn't it?
It is a lack of honesty. And it's interesting because, that word should, it tends to, in a lot of people, produce either a sort of a feeling that they are less than the should, with that voice in their head, or they rebel, of course, and go off and cause havoc.
They should know better, shouldn't they? After all,
they could.
I think it's interesting. I also find it fascinating in today's culture where we have this slightly in the corporate world, certainly in the UK, is becoming more and more focused on this idea of engagement and happiness, and instead of enhancing people's potential by making them accountable and getting them to perform, we're almost becoming frightened of our people, and so words like should, you really must, and everything becomes quite discretionary if you're not careful, and the people don't know where they stand. There's a lack of sort of clarity, isn't there? Because leaders are getting more and more vague because they're more and more less and less clear themselves about what they want people to do, and so people then get into this dance of, or your cultural soup of, well, let's try and work out what you wanted. Oh, well, so now we know it wasn't that. So, well, I should have got that better then, shouldn't I? Yes, you should. And it's like, you're right about the finger wagging thing. It's all, and it's just this lack of honesty, it's transparency between people. I find fascinating.
It is, and again, you see, we go back to this word should, and when you are a leader and you are under pressure to deliver certain results, and therefore you need to ask your team to do X, Y, and Z in order to achieve those results, there is a sense of onerousness and ownership. There has to be, and everyone has to own their piece of the pie or their ingredients to create the pie or the cake. And yes, that would come with a sense of should, I guess. But as long as everyone is very clear, I think that, we've agreed to do this type of work in order to get this kind of salary, and that comes with some shoulds around it, and we can be honest about where our limitations are, what we don't understand, what we do understand. So there's no shaming around people saying, I'm sorry, I just don't know how to do X, Y, or Z, please help. I'm not so concerned about shoulds there because there's a contract in place. I come to work and I do X in order to achieve Y, which is, a salary. I think where the word should is more dangerous is when it comes to our emotional lives. I should stay in this marriage even though it's killing me. I should go on holiday to Ibiza every year, even though I, hate those sorts of holidays because everyone else is doing it. I should have a thinner body. I should dye my hair. I should, the worst one, I should always try to look younger than I am. I mean, what the actual are we talking about? Those are where people lose their sense of self. Because why should we all try and look younger? Why? Why? I mean, life gets better as you get older, as far as I'm concerned. So
I don't know, Jo. Tell me.
By that one. I'm really confused by that one. I tell my children all the time, it's rubbish. They're lying to you on the telly. They're lying. Don't try and hold on to youth. God, yeah. That's where the shoulds upset me more, probably, and I will challenge them more.
I can sense a soapbox being
I've got many of those.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So you see, without trivializing that bit, I'm just thinking actually, because I know we're talking about the shoulds bit, but how does that link into confidence? Are you saying that's because shoulds get in the way of authenticity and the resulting confidence? Right, I see. Okay. Yeah. So unpack what you mean by confidence and what's in it.
Well, okay, so confidence, I think in its purest form, aside from the authenticity piece that we've just been talking about, confidence is, in its purest form, I think the ability to, or the sense that whatever happens, you will find a way to deal with it. Most of us are, if you drill down through the lack of confidence, what you find is actually a fear of life. A fear of feeling negative feelings or a fear of what the future might bring. And most of my clients are on a worry train, and it just goes round and around and around and around, and they're caught up in fear. And if I can help people to understand that they are fearing something that hasn't yet happened, and they're also believing that they can't cope, and yet they have plenty of evidence from the past that they have coped with bad, well, quote unquote, bad things, and that they can actually find ways to muddle through difficult times, then actually, they are believing a lie about themselves, which is that they can't cope, when actually they can, because they're still here. They're coping. And also, of course, their heads are stuck in the future based on something from the past. And often my job is to bring people back into the moment. You're coping now. And the future, as we know, never arrives. It's just now. And now it's a new now. And there's another new now. And it's now. And so there's all these stories we tell ourselves which are based on not a lot. Just that it's fear producing fear. So confidence is the ability to, or the knowledge, the deep knowledge that whatever happens, you'll be okay, and the future is something that is a bridge you'll cross when you come to it.
So, okay, so let's have a think then. So you talk about this. So if you think that the stereotypical view of confidence is this ability to actually conquer your fears and do stuff. So, for example, people who are more confident are more likely to do professional speaking or stand up in a meeting or have a difficult conversation with the milkman or, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So I like the idea that you've linked fear so heavily with it.
Yeah.
Is that really? So in other words, the showmanship aspect is easily confused, isn't it? Because actually confident people tend to be slightly more noticed.
Yes. And for me, it's always been. I've known from the get-go as a coach that I would be dealing with people's fears, because to me it's obvious. The fear is the thing that holds everyone back. And again, sorry, cultural soup. The cultural soup. It's all based on fear. Buy this anti-aging product because otherwise no one's going to love you because you'll have a wrinkle on your face. Or buy this, you must change your sofa before Christmas because otherwise the neighbours or your relatives won't like you because you don't have the right sofa. It's all fear-based. And actually the antidote to fear is love, is acceptance, is faith. I get quite excited when a client comes and says, I'm afraid of public speaking, for example, and then I ask them what the fear is underneath. And when they can say to me, actually, it's a fear of failure or a fear of public humiliation, then I get excited because then I know that we are dealing with something truthful. Because the lack of confidence, I believe, is symptomatic of believing in fear. And I don't actually think this is a scary world unless you believe it is.
So if someone comes to you and says, okay, I'm frightened of public speaking, and you sort of say, okay, tell me your deeper fears, and then someone says, okay, it's fear of being humiliated, found out, shamed, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
What happens then?
It depends on the client, but we will talk a lot about what they are believing other people are thinking of them in that moment. We will have a look at how they feel when they are receiving a public speech. Are they busy judging that other person who's speaking? Are they picking them apart? Because I tell you, if they're picking other people apart, they're going to be picking themselves apart. So maybe some compassion for others might be the antidote to a bit of self-compassion. But I will also do crazy things with them. Like I will get them to just walk out into the street. We'll go for a walk and coach. And I'll say, right, I'd like you to go up to that person over there and ask them for directions. I'd like you to go and buy a coffee for that homeless person and have, a 2-minute chat. Right? And we just start breaking through that fear of, I don't know what to do in the moment. Nah. And there'll be a lot, if it's public speaking, we'll do a lot of filming of them, reading a letter, reading a menu, doing a bit of a public speech, reading a bit of Hamlet. Just breaking down all the barriers around all of that. And slowly but surely, they come to realise that their fear of other people means that they are making other people more important than themselves.
Yes.
And other people's opinions of them more important than their own opinion of themselves.
And often those people who they don't even respect themselves in the first place, which is the most bizarre thing of all, really, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you seen? I'm trying to think. I'm not great at remembering people's names. I remember this experiment being done with a bunch of people who were asked to go out and lie on the floor in the middle of a public area or in a tube station or something like this, or an underground station or something.
Okay.
And it was this idea of being able to sort of separate yourself from the environment, so you could just stand. And this idea of standing around just pointing to the ceiling, pointing to the sky or something. And a lot of people have used those sorts of techniques, haven't they, to sort of stiffen people's resolve and say, hey, why are you so worried about what people think of you?
Yeah.
Because, doing a dramatic statement like this, another thing someone once taught me was go up and look at people directly in their eyes.
Yeah.
Because if you're lacking confidence, that's the first thing that actually people don't really ever look at you, do they?
No. But
and it's the fastest way to conquer your fears. I think on a previous podcast we talked about this sort of it's a primeval connection through the eyes, and the person who does it first is the one who actually can appear to be more confident in a way.
You can, and you know what? Those are little quick fixes for confidence in the moment, and they work and they're great. But I'm always much more interested in helping my clients understand the thought process behind the lack of confidence. And the bottom line is, if you think other people's opinion of you is more important than your own opinion of yourself, that's what you need to do business with.
Yeah, dead right.
Because why are we making everyone else God in our lives? Why? They're just other people with the same fears and worries and sleeping patterns and eating patterns and problems and and joys and fears, and there's the rest of us. And when we make other people gods in our lives, we're in trouble.
It's true. It's true. I mean, it's funny, isn't it, how we're all the same? I mean, and obviously there's a sort of a primeval reason for this, and a sort of hardware software thing in the brain that makes this happen. But it is this thing about giving yourself it's just so relieving, isn't it? We don't have to be quite so bothered about what everybody thinks of you all the time.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
it's a real effort, isn't it, being that worried about other people, and especially in our world sometimes, because we're putting ourselves out there and training, developing, speaking, any of those sorts of things, and people are literally look at you and say, "Is this frightening?" And say, "No, because actually none of you can do me any damage."
Yeah,
you can hold a view of someone. You can hold a view of someone, but actually, so what? And people don't get that, do they? And you have to be brave to take risks in order to challenge your own fears. And I like this idea that you sort of break it down into the bite-sized chunks, because that is the secret, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the secret. The other secret, though, is again an underlying belief that life is no longer a competition. And, the reason people's opinions, of course people's opinions matter. Of course they matter, but they don't matter more than my opinion of myself. But the reason is I think because I don't feel like I'm in competition with anybody else anymore. I'm here doing my thing. I happen to be great at it. I happen to love it. I'm very lucky. And it's an enormous pleasure to help other people find their thing that they're really great at. But I'm not fighting with others to try and be better than them or slot in or worse than them. I'm just being myself. And I want the best for everyone, genuinely. And so therefore, people's opinions they don't stick in the way that they used to, probably because I'm not attracting any negativity, because I'm genuinely just chuffed for you if you're doing well. But also because I'm running my own race. I'm swimming in my own lane. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it's not, again, you see there's this myth in our culture that life's a competition. We're brought up like that, in schools. And it's, yes, we all need a bit of healthy competition in order to develop and grow and, innovate. But we're not in direct competition with each other. We're all swimming in the same soup. It's a lake. Give your good stuff to the lake of life and trust that, some good stuff will slosh onto your beach. It's a far nicer way to live.
Now, Jo, I have to take issue with you now, because you're really mixing your analogies. We've got soup and beaches, and swimming in soup and the beach of life.
Rivers,
I suspect a new book's in the stocks, and you're playing with the title, aren't you?
Oh God, do you know what? I was only saying to my partner the other day, I keep coming up with ideas for more books. I can't keep on top of it. I can't write them quick enough.
Listen, you know what I'm going to say this, and I'm saying this only to tease you, but you really should do better. So
thank you. Thanks for that empowerment there.
That's no problem. I should have the invoices in the post. No, so joking aside, it's good that I think very similarly myself about having tons of ideas. It's lovely to talk to somebody else who does as well. Well, talking of books, I know you've written something that's moving seamlessly to this bit. So tell me about the book you've already written before they tell me about the ones that you might write in the future.
Okay, so I wrote a book. I wrote it. Let me think now. It's 5 years. 4 years ago. 4 years ago I wrote it. It was published 2 years ago. But probably 5 years ago, this idea kind of dropped into my head, literally dropped into my head. I'm going to write the title Flying for Beginners dropped into my head. And I knew I was going to write a book about managing the voices in your head in order that you can kind of fly free of them, I guess is why it's called Flying for Beginners. And so the idea dropped in from nowhere. I then spent another year kind of ruminating, gestating, the idea. At that point, my youngest daughter was still only at preschool, so I was only working kind of, very, very part-time. And then as she went off to school, and my other two daughters were already in school, and I was able to work a little more, I started writing the book, and it poured out of me pretty quickly because of all the gestating and the ruminating for so long, and it's essentially a step-by-step guide to managing the negative chatter in your head, and it's a kind of proven technique really for dealing with that and managing that in order that you can have a more confident relationship with yourself, a more authentic relationship with the people you meet. So it was published a couple of years ago, and it was, do you know what, Russ? It's one of my proudest moments, that book being published. Obviously, the birth of my 3 kids, proud moment. And then there's probably my book, because it was, as a former journalist, to have a book published is, it's a pretty big thing. And I'm very proud of it.
Oh, quite right too. And for someone who would want to read it, it's all about getting rid of the inner scripts, and it's all about.
Well, it's not about getting rid of them; it's about managing them.
Good.
It's about understanding where that inner critic comes from, what its motivation is, and finding and identifying and growing a kinder, wiser voice within you, which we all have. We all have it, and once you've done that, you've then got a choice in every moment. Am I going to listen to this fear-based negativity, or am I going to choose to believe something slightly kinder or wiser or more objective? Now, of course, if you're about to be hit by a bus, you want to listen to that inner critic telling you to get out of the road, idiot. And you would, it's there to help us survive. But when it comes to our emotional life, I believe it speaks out of turn. And there is something healthier that we can be listening to. So that's what it's about. And it's a short book as well, because, I've read, obviously, in my career and as a human being, person, going through struggles, certainly in my 20s and 30s, I've read a lot of self-help books. And then obviously in my training, as you all know, we get to read lots of self-help books and pretend that they're just for research purposes, and they're not possibly going to be helping us, which is obviously utter rubbish. But a lot of them are quite lengthy, like really lengthy. And I noticed what was happening with me was I would sort of read the first third, and then I sometimes felt, not always, but sometimes felt like, okay, we're kind of repeating ourselves here. There's a lot of padding in these books. So I've kept mine quite short, so it's 20,000 words. It can be read in 2 evenings, and then the principles applied. So it's a shorter book by design.
And you know what? There's not many reviews on Amazon which are only 5 stars.
I know, go me, yay! And I didn't pay any of them either. Can you actually believe it?
No.
Yeah. But that's what's amazing is a lot of the reviews are like a really nice short book, lovely slim book, get straight to the action. Because we're busy people, aren't we? And I you could pad and pad and pad. I really didn't see the point. In padding, so I've kept it short, and I'm glad I did. I think people genuinely find that it's a less daunting prospect to read a 20,000 word book than it is an 80,000 word book. Thank you for noticing all the 5-star reviews. That's good of you. You've done your research.
Well, I clicked on the link. I'm not going to build my part too much, Jo. Right, brilliant. Okay then. So if people would like to get hold of you, obviously you can get the book via Amazon. But if people would like to get hold of you, how would they do that? So via my website, which is Jo-Emerson with one M, so EMERSON.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn and Twitter and
Instagram and Facebook, but probably the best place is to start with my website.
And so someone who, why would someone come and see you in the first place? What would they be? Would they be thinking or having going on in their lives where they think, I need the services of Jo Emerson?
Yeah, okay. Well, if it's obviously there's the corporate stuff which is different, but let's just say an individual. So my youngest client's 14, my oldest has been 78, but my average client is in the middle of their lives, in that kind of 35 to 55 bracket, and they are waking up every morning with a sense of, is this it? So what they've sort of created on the outside of their life, home, marriage, kids, career, hobbies, etc., all lovely. There's a gnawing sense inside that there's something more. That some of the stuff they're doing on the outside isn't rhyming with who they are on the inside, and they need a little bit of help navigating that transition. And the number of emails I get saying, oh, look at me, I'm having a midlife crisis, like a midlife crisis is some sort of thing to be scathing about. And I always say the middle of our lives is a stage where we shed a skin, and it's quite painful and it's quite disorienting, because what we thought life was, suddenly it doesn't quite seem to be what it was, or we've evolved, we've outgrown some of the life we've built. And so people often engage my services to help them kind of land and navigate this new ground they find themselves in. It's a more cerebral experience of life, I think, as we get older. But that's quite terrifying when you've been used to living just sort of physically in the world.
What do you mean by that?
I think, so Wayne Dyer, God bless him, and before he died in one of his later seminars, talked about there being a morning, an afternoon, and an evening of our lives. And in the sort of morning of our lives, we're very busy sort of learning how to be physically in the world. So, it starts with tying our shoelaces and feeding ourselves and, falling asleep, learning to fall asleep by ourselves, and then going to school, and then getting exams, and then getting a job, and finding a partner, and buying a house, and, getting better at our careers, increasing our salaries, etc., etc. And there's nothing wrong with all of that. It's all very, very necessary. But he talks about in the afternoon of our lives, as we start to sort of think, those things don't motivate us in the same way that they did when we were younger. And we start to question kind of what's the point of it all. We start to need a more, I suppose, spiritual, emotional experience of life than we did maybe when we were younger and very busy ticking all of those other boxes. And for a lot of people, when they've got to the top of the tree, number of people I work with who've got amazing jobs, amazing, and they're like, it's just not making me happy anymore. I need something else, but they don't quite know what that is. And they've sort of, they've done the learning Tai Chi, and they've done the, taking the sabbatical and traveling, and they still don't quite. Yeah, and often it's about giving something back, or it's about a shift in career, or it's about developing some sort of spiritual practice, or learning yoga. It's not up to me to tell people what to do, but I think certainly if we can then go inside ourselves a bit more in the afternoon of our lives, and when we come to the evening of our lives, we tend to have a more peaceful, nourishing evening of our lives. That's the theory, and I've seen it outplayed many times.
Very interesting. We interviewed a guy called Charles Euxter, who's very famous in his views of aging and the elderly, and he really it's interesting hearing that analogy again, the way he described it, because he really railed against it.
Oh, did he?
Yes, in the sense that actually that's this sort of evening, this twilight, leads to your decline and end. And
okay, I wouldn't.
I know you didn't say that, but it's interesting, isn't it? It's interesting just chatting about it. That use of that language is fascinating, isn't it? Because I think he was 94 or something, and on his fifth career. And one of the key things and it's very much stuck with me, and I know Janet and I talked about this quite a lot, is this idea that you just never retire. Stop stop retiring, because as soon as you retire, the incidence of depression, anxiety, and stress, and
it's such an outdated model, isn't it? Retirement?
Very outdated, isn't it?
Listen, I wasn't for a minute. The evening of your lives is a slower thing.
Exactly. Didn't you actually say something about the fact that someone worked all their life earlier and then they got to 55 and dropped dead or something? And one of our financial guys who was talking about this said so many people do the model where they live their lives, work all their lives, and at the moment they retire, they drop dead and say to themselves, I should have.
Yes, right, exactly. Which is why often in the afternoon of your life, you're starting to think, maybe I need to be working a bit less, or working a bit smarter, or working differently, or more, because actually the drive is not just about making money anymore.
That's right.
There's something more. And, if we can sort of, it's about how we relate to life. And I am not for a minute suggesting that the evening of our lives is some sort of twilight or anything. I'm talking about the emotional development stages we go through, and the people I know who have successfully kind of navigated this tricky afternoon midlife bit have very cool evenings. They're often doing work they love. They are, often falling in love again, with a second or a third partner. They are having rich experiences of life. Rich experiences of life. And, I totally agree with you. I think the retirement model is, it just writes people off. And when they've got the most wisdom and the most to offer, I find it infuriating. Because, and so many of my clients, Russ, say to me, I'm 42, I've got no choices left.
I know.
I'm like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? You could start over with a career, like you just said, with in your 90s, if that's what you choose to do. And have loads of careers, I say. Gosh, do it.
And do you use that accent when you ask them that question? Just out of interest.
No.
Is that part of the process?
Not normally. Just I saved that one just for you and your listeners.
Thank you. Brilliant. All right then, Jo. It's been fun. It's been joyful, and actually, really useful. And I think lots of interesting tools and techniques. And I've had a rampage around your website, as you know, because you and I chatted about this. And there's loads of interesting bits and bobs on there for people as well. And I think even a free ebook that people can get their mitts on. Yeah,
free ebook, but there's also a free little have a go at coaching little app thing that I've developed where you can literally scroll through 10 very pertinent questions and help people who've never experienced coaching before can have a little go online and go, that's what coaching does to my brain. Interesting. And that's totally free. There's not even any sign up for that. That's just a gift. So that's on the homepage if people want to have a look at that.
Gifts as well. I mean, it's just a podcast that keeps on giving.
I know.
What can I say? I know. Jo, it's been an absolute joy. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
Take care.
We hope you found today's podcast useful. If you did, why not subscribe and listen to our other podcasts? We would love it if you could leave us a review. To access our resilience coaching, contact us at info@qedod.com. And finally, if you'd like to download our free resilience ebook, go to qedod.com/free ebook. Thanks for listening.